And I'm supposed to start this by saying good afternoon and welcome to the 35th CALLERLAB Convention. Today is March 17th, 2008, and this is Teaching Order Principles Intersession. I am Dottie Welch, and the other panelist today is Don Beck. I come from Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada, and he comes from Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts, United States. Okay. Most of you are probably aware that during the last year, CALLERLAB has approved the first version of the Teaching Order Design Principles. Just a very brief history of what this is all about. In the course of attempting to revise the mainstream teaching order, the ad hoc committee that was involved with that thought that it would be a good idea if we looked at the process, general process that we should be applying to the teaching order creation. And out of that idea came this Teaching Order Design Principles document. It initiated from some material that Don Beck and Clark Baker had put together and put out on the website asking for a response, and there was some response. We picked it up, we asked for more response, we combined it into one document, and that's what we have. It's not to say that this is the absolute final word on this, but this is where we are and what we've managed to think about so far. Already a few matters have come to our attention that we might want to add to what's already there, but this seems to have met with quite a bit of approval that we should think about it along these lines. And what we're hoping to do today is not go through every single piece of this document and discuss each thing in detail, but rather we've picked out from this the major points that one should think about when one is designing a teaching order. And we have also looked at a short list, shorter than our basic or mainstream or plus or whatever lists are, a short list of moves that we would like to make into a practical exercise to say, okay, if you wanted to teach these moves in 10 weeks and you wanted to apply the teaching order principles to the process of deciding what the order should be, what would happen? How would this work? So the idea is to get all of you thinking about the things that we have in this teaching order. We're not saying that this list is going to be the list for anything in particular, only that it's an example of how this works. Okay? They are all off the mainstream list. All the moves are off the mainstream list. But it's a subset of that. All right. So we're going to work through this teaching order design principles, look at some of the most important aspects of it, apply those, talk about how they would be applied, and hopefully have time to sort this all out. An hour is going to be short, I think, to do all of this. So I will let Don have a few moments to say his view about this, and then we'll get down to some action. So in the lights, camera, action thing, we hope this has shed some light on this whole process. In order to create the teaching order, that's like making a script for what we do and we teach. And the action will be down the road when we actually try to teach it.
Thanks, Dottie. I'm really excited that CALLERLAB is allowing us to have this session. CALLERLAB has always had a proposed or a suggested teaching order, and it's always bothered me because since before CALLERLAB existed, 37, 38 years ago, I'm not sure what, I started learning about teaching orders from places outside of the calling realm, and I found that most callers taught in the order that they learned things, and that was the period when, and the CALLERLAB original teaching order list came from that kind of stuff. And that had a lot to do with the order that callers learned. It had a lot to do with the order that things were being created. There were a lot of new calls coming out at the time. And so they learned a new call was written, and they learned it and added to their thing. And they made lists the way they learned it. It wasn't the best way to help dancers learn. And so I've always been upset by the lists, and I'm not in total agreement with what we have now, and even with the principles we've come up with. I disagree with Dottie on some things, and she just agrees with me. But the thing we're trying to do here is this lights action camera. We're trying to light light bulbs in your mind. We want you guys here to think. We're going to give you some principles that help people learn, and we're actually going to do an exercise, as Dottie mentioned, to see how we apply those principles and talk as a group. And why would you want to create a new teaching order? Well, maybe you're going to be on a supreme committee that makes CALLERLAB do everything properly and perfectly, but more likely you're going to use a teaching order that fits your needs for your particular class, whether it be from non-dancer to plus or non-dancer to mainstream, or whether it be from A1 to A2, whatever. One of the first things you have to do, let's not do the first things first, but we want, if you can teach things properly, you are going to help dancers not get embarrassed, enjoy dancing more, and be able to integrate into the local square dance program at the end of your series of lessons, and not be embarrassed by not knowing what they're doing at the end. There are many principles that go into this, and just a quick summary that I like to talk about. There are a lot of things mentioned in the CALLERLAB guideline. I'm not sure that all of them are quite as critical as important, but here are some of the important factors. First of all, near the beginning of your series, you have to teach dancers to dance. You've got to teach them circle left, circle right, element left. Some of the essentials just to get them moving with music. There are definite things you teach in the beginning. I feel the best way to teach after that is to teach them to get into and out of some of the main formations that many of our calls are in. A-chain through formation, facing lines, pretty quickly after that ocean waves. Once they are comfortable with being in the formations and moving through them easily, then you can teach any call you want. Put it where you want and when you want. I forgot how we worded it in here. Is it precise calls and non-precise calls? Precise calls are ones where you've got to be facing one wall or another. Non-precise calls are like circle left, right-hand star, goal posting. Dottie is on the side that you teach some of the non-precise ones early so that the dancers don't have to be that accurate and still can succeed. My personal philosophy is I want to teach them precision first and going on to the others. I call the non-precise ones sloppy calls. You know, where does a right-hand star end? Well, it ends when you tell them to stop. And for me, every square starts at a different time, so they have to stop at a different time, and I can't use stars until the last night. Personal thing. But by getting them into formations so you can teach any call, then we get on to some of these other rules. Now, one of the things is if you look at some of the older teaching orders caller recommended, it starts with the easier calls and ends with the harder calls. You work your way up until learning more difficult calls. The difficult calls are the ones that need more practice before they get out into the real world. If you teach spin chain through on the last night of a mainstream class, they're not going to have much practice when they get out. If you teach it on the third night, then they're going to have a whole series worth of lessons to teach it in. So one of the rules that I like, and we agree on here, is teach as much as possible harder calls early so they have time to practice them. So they're dancing them in a controlled atmosphere. Two is you have a bunch of hard calls, don't teach them all the same night. Don't teach them on successive nights if possible. Say, take your 5 hard calls and spread them out evenly along so that they can learn one until it's a good friend and then go on to the next one. So that means obviously teaching, let's say you're teaching 3 calls a night. Tonight we're going to teach a hard call. You have to teach some easy ones that are fillers. Another thing, don't teach calls that are similar the same night. Now, what does similar mean? Could be similar actions, similar names. Those are the 2 basic ones. But let's, I'm not even thinking of my examples here, but somebody give me an example of 2 calls with similar actions. Right and left through and square through. Don't teach them the same night. There are lots of opinions on different ways to teach square through, but we may get to some of that later. But what you want is, if I have 2 calls, lines facing out wheel and deal versus lines facing out bend the line. If you teach calls close together, then when the dancer gets up to dance it, and you call it, you've got lines pass through and do one of those, and that's one of those new calls we know. And it's going to, if they have a 50-50 chance of doing the right one, we all know that they have a 70-30 chance of doing the wrong one. And part of learning is you want their body to learn the right way. You want to teach it right the first time. You want their body to do it right. You don't want to give them a chance to do it the wrong way. So if you teach one of them and they don't know a thing about the other one, they're going to learn that one 2, 3, 4 weeks until it's a really good friend. And then you introduce the other one, and they're going to get up and you say pass through and one of them, and their mind's going to say, oh, that's my old buddy this, and they're going to do it. Or they're going to say, oh, that's the new one I'm learning, and how does that go? And that does that. So if they have similar actions, separate them. Don't teach them together so they can learn one at a time and keep them distinct. Same with similar names. Oh, similar actions, slide through, star through, box the gnat. They're all similar actions. Jerry? Jerry Justin just commented stars and star through. I was about to get the second carry. Similar sounding names. Stars and star through. Right and left through and right and left grand. Swing and swing through. If they have similar names, teach them separately for the same reasons you want to teach similar actions separately. So when they hear a new one, they don't confuse it with their old friend that they've been doing for several weeks. We're pushing through this a little more quickly than we normally do because we want to try this workshop session. Calls that frequently go together. Lead to the right, circle to a line. That's not a call. That's 2 calls. I like to use the example when I was filling in for a caller in a class that I was teaching, that he was teaching, and I said, what have you taught recently? What calls have you taught so I can use it? And he gave me a whole list of calls that I can use. What do you want taught? Oh, pick any you want. He didn't have an order. I said, what did you teach last week? Because I wanted to reteach those, not just call them cold. And he said, well, one of the things I taught was recycle and sweep a quarter. They go really nicely together, so I like to teach them together. I think it was actually Flutter Wheel and sweep a quarter. Doesn't matter. So I decided, fine, I would reteach Flutter Wheel and not mention sweep a quarter. Because I wanted the dancers to know the separate parts. And I had a dancer come up to me after that tip and say, oh, that's where it ends. He just knew the action of the 2 together. He had no idea where one stopped and the other started. Now, on things like lead to the right and circle to a line, teach them separately, but eventually start using them together, because that's the way they will encounter them most. And you do want them to learn that sequence. Pass through, wheel and deal, first couple go, or double pass through. What am I trying to say? Double pass through, first couple go left, next couple go right. They frequently run into that sequence, so you do want to use that as a sequence after a while, but after they've learned the individual calls and teach them the sequences they're going to know, they're going to need. So, don't teach similar actions close together, spread them out. Don't teach similar names together, spread them out. Teach hard calls early enough to have practice time. Don't waste time teaching calls from formations and arrangements. I didn't mention that yet. APD, all position, by definition, whatever you want to call it. I know callers that say, I teach square through by having the 4 men do it, and that way they're going to avoid the courtesy turn. But their choreography is basically very limited in formations, and they never call it that way. So they're busy teaching men to do the women's part on a normal situation that they never end up using, and the dancers don't get much use out of that. My feeling is teach it the way it's used commonly. Some calls or some callers will use it in many ways. Others don't. Don't waste the time teaching ways that you don't use it commonly. A good example, when I am teaching at the beginning, I teach heads and sides. I don't teach couple number 1, couple number 2, couple number 3, and couple number 4. I'm not calling non-symmetric choreography to these people. They don't have to know couple 1 and 2 do this while 3 and 4 do that. The only thing they have to know is when another caller comes in and calls and he says, couples 1 and 3 do a right and left through. By then they have to know it, but I warn that caller, they only know heads, they don't know 1 and 3 yet. I fill them in on that stuff at the end before they have to graduate, but they don't have to learn it. I got too much to teach them early without having to fill in little things like that. And lastly, and this is a big one, adjust your order to fit the lists being taught and the number of lessons being taught. If I have, and the exercise we're going to do right now, or after, Dottie may have a few words, I picked a bunch of calls that could be a square dance program. And we're not going to be debating whether these are the right calls for a good 10-week program or not. You guys are going to take my word for it at this point that we're going to do these. But we're going to do an exercise of if you were told, please teach these calls, and you have 10 weeks to do it in, what order would you put them in? Now, it turns out that if I had 20 weeks to teach them in, or 12 weeks, or 7, it would probably be a different teaching order than we're going to come up with for 10. It's an interesting thing to think about. And all of CALLERLAB's orders just give an order. They don't say how many weeks that order is going to fit in. Let's say I have 2 hard calls, and I've separated them. I want to separate them by 3 weeks. If I'm teaching 1 call a night, that's easy. If I'm teaching 5 calls a night, that might bring them closer together. You've got to create an order that will fit your circumstance. Is that buzzing noise? Where's the wireless mic? It's off. Okay. Does that do anything? Okay, we'll see how long that works. Separate calls with similar names. Separate calls with similar actions. Teach harder calls earlier so they have more time to practice. Don't waste time teaching calls from formations and arrangements that you don't use, and adjust your order to fit the lists being taught and the number of lessons being taught. You guys have a handout. There's one that I usually give when I'm giving the talk. I don't have copies of it. It's on the web. Unfortunately, it's not on my website yet. It's on Clark Baker's, and I forgot what the URL is. But emails will get you copies of it. Emails to me or Dottie, and we can send you a PDF of it. Creating a teaching order that will help students succeed, is what and if you send me an email at donbeck@donbeck.org and tell me what you want, I will forward you a PDF of it. donbeck@donbeck.org. Shall we do it?
Okay, so the next stage of this, if you would pass this out, please. Watch the wire here. Okay, so what is being passed out is a chart and some information on the back of the chart. The chart has, down the left-hand side, I think it's 28 moves that we've chosen to address today. And as Don said, the moves we've chosen are not up for debate. We just chose ones that we thought were appropriate for this exercise. And they do have some relevance because we also were aiming for a set that one could teach and end up with something that you could then call that would essentially be a modern Western square dance feel. Some of the stuff we do is missing, but that's the nature of the exercise. Across the top of the chart, we have the following titles: Formation, Describes, Precise, Builder, Difficulty, Units, Dancers, Transfer, and Patterns. Okay, so I'm going to briefly explain what's on the back of the chart here, and we're going to talk about each one in turn as we do this. So in the first column, what's meant to be put in there is information about each of the calls that has to do with formations. And the question would be, what formations are involved in using this call? And since these are all mainstream moves, the formations that we're most interested in, dancers may go through something else in the process of doing the call, but the formations that I considered most important would be square, circle, facing lines, two-faced lines, lines facing out, 8-chain through, waves, and double pass-through. The rule involved, as Don has already mentioned, if you read the teaching order design principles, you'll see that the rule there is we should be introducing new formations gradually. So we would like to let the dancers dance in a small number and then gradually add a new formation one at a time. So, rather than trying to absorb all of these different things all at once, I think we want to start thinking about this. And has everybody got their chart? You've got a pencil and paper thing to bear on. You might want to start making some notes to yourself. So as you look down the moves that we have here, formation. Which ones do you do from a circle or a square? Alaman left? Yes. Bend the line? No. California twirl? Maybe. Circle left or right? Yep. Couple circulate? No. Dive through? Do-si-do? Yes. Ferris wheel? No. And do-si-do to a wave? Probably not. You could, but... Flutter wheel? From a square? Heads, yes. Grand right and left? Yep. Grand square? Yep. Ladies chain? Yep. Lead right? Yep. Pass through? Yes. Promenade? Yes. Reversed flutter wheel? Possibly. Right and left through? Yes. Right or left-handed star? Yes. Run? Probably not. Spin chain through? No. Square through? Yep. Star through? Yes. Sweep a quarter? Doubtful. Yes. Swing through? You could, but in mainstream, not very frequently. Trade? No, I'd say even possible, but out of a square or a circle? Well, maybe. U-turn back? Could, but even out of a square or a circle, even that doesn't happen very often at mainstream. Veer left. But you might. Heads, yeah. Okay. All right. So that's the first of the formations, facing lines. Okay, run down the list and tell me which ones you think of as facing line moves. Bend the line, possibly. Not usually. Okay. Do-si-do. Do-si-do to a wave. Flutter wheel. Ladies chain. Pass-through. Promenade possible. Probably not, though. Reverse flutter. Right and left through. Possibly stars. Square through. Star through. Sweep a quarter, perhaps. Runs. Facing lines. Could, maybe not. And I would add that you could do circle left. We kind of skipped over that one. Okay. All right, two face lines. Which ones? Bend the line. California twirl. Couple circulate. Ferris wheel. Promenade, if it's going in the right direction, or if you call reverse or whatever, wrong way. Runs possible. Okay, lines facing out. Bend, yeah. California twirl. Couple way at the bottom there. U-turn back and possibly trades. And run. Okay? Okay, I'm not guaranteeing that I'm listing everything here. Just getting you the feel of what we're doing here. Okay, 8 chain through. Which ones? Element left, for sure. California true, possibly. Circle in a group of 4. Dive through. Yeah, the do-si-do to a wave. Do-si-do. Grant it left if it's the right position, yes. Flutter wheel. Yes. Yeah. But veer left. Yes. How about you spin chain through, swing through, square through, star through. Okay. Waves, obviously, swing through, spin chain through, runs, trades, possibly U-turn back, and double pass through. All the stuff that you can do in the middle, right? Ladies chains. So, yeah. Yep.
I chose to put them that way, Jerry, because I teach them separately. I use the do-si-do, in circles and the heads go forward and what have you for quite a while. It should be it. Jerry Justin asked why do we have do-si-do and do-si-do to a wave separately, and I say I teach them separately. I teach do-si-do and circle stuff, heads go forward, do-si-do, etc. When I'm ready to introduce waves, I teach them step to a wave. I teach do-si-do, full around a little bit more to make a wave, and that's the way I think of them. That's why I stuck them on here. It's to a wave, yeah, you could put it that way. That's fine.
Okay, so second thing on here is describes, and the idea for that column is the name descriptive for English speakers? Okay, this is a fairly quick one. Which ones describe what you're doing if you speak English? Circles. Stars. Bend the line's not bad. Pass through. U-turn back. Ladies chain's not bad. Yeah, that's trades. Veer. Lead right. Promenade, maybe. I mean, promenade certainly has a walk route there. Even maybe right and left through, since we do your right and left thing, if you explain it. Okay, so that's the second part. Third column, precise. Don already mentioned this. Is precise execution required for success? Does it involve fractional turns? The underlying rule here being to begin with calls of one kind or the other, whichever one you believe in. We have a difference of opinion on that one, but at least be aware of what you're doing. So which ones of these would you consider precise, requiring careful fractional turns, for instance? Bend the line, California twirl, circulate. You could think of it. Yeah. Do-si-do. Do you think that's a precise move? True. Yeah. But I view element left as a move that doesn't require fractional precision, but rather requires orientation with respect to who you were supposed to be facing at the end of it. And that is a corrector. If you can focus on the person, you don't have to do the precise fractional turn. Okay. Well, I would add spin chain through, for instance. Definitely precision's required for spin chain through. Square through. Yes, you've got to get those quarter turns correctly. Grand square. Star through. Swing through. Those are precise moves. The builders. Now, this is one that he didn't mention, but we do have in there that there's underlying rule that we should teach building block calls before they are needed within another call. And, for instance, do we want to teach trades before we teach swing through? Because we think of it as two trades. So trade would be a building block, potentially a building block for swing through. So which ones of these do you think of are building blocks? And there's two kinds of there's another kind of building block. It might be a sub-part of a definition of a move or call, but it might also be a building block that's useful to the caller for creating a formation. Like do-si-do to a wave is a building block for making waves. So what falls in that category? California twirl is part of dive through. Veer left is to build a two-faced line. Lead to the right to take you from a square to an 8-chain through position. We had a discussion about whether or not we'd put spin chain through on here, and I'm aware of that issue. And I won't debate your wish to have the cast off 3/4. We have put this on here because as we get along, where you're going to see there's the difficulty issue. Spin chain through clearly falls into this is a hard call, and we wanted to have one such on the list.
Digressing just slightly, but I personally teach spin chain through before cast off 3/4. Cast off 3/4 is very difficult because you don't know where to end. And by teaching it first as the centers trade and go a little bit more until you have a wave across the center, till the very center's hook arms, that helps define the ending position of the cast off 3/4. And I use that to teach the cast off 3/4 as a first place. In addition to that, I teach California twirl after dive through. I teach on a dive through, I say make an arch, centers duck under, Others step forward. We don't want you left out of this process. So you have your hands joined in an arch. The woman turns under, the man walks around, so you're facing back in. That tells them exactly where to be end up facing. After quite a while, 1 second, Hans-Gerd. After a while, I'll have lines pass through, grab hands with the person next to you, make an arch, make believe somebody did a dive through, do the last part of it. That part has a name by itself. And that way it helps give them a good positioning as to where it really ends. So I don't want to discuss the particular nitty-gritty like this. There are many ways to look at it, but, don't. You know what?
Please, be patient. My husband's carrying mic.
Okay, there you go. I've found that it's much easier for the students to learn something and then add to it than to try to give them directions on something while they're learning another call and then tell them, well, that really is part of that. I haven't had trouble with with them learning to cast off 3/4 from waves. Now, when they're doing a push cast, that's different, and I teach that separately. But from waves, I have them count walls, and that makes it pretty simple for them to do.
I find it easy to do, but I don't really want to debate that because I really want to get into setting the session up. Hans-Gerd, did you have a comment that you wanted to throw in?
The comment was that
the mic.
My comment is if the students are not with English concerned, so they have to learn the English words first. And if they are, as a native language, have German or Dutch or whatever, they have to learn these extra terms beside the calls, and this is extra work for me as a caller. So if I have a call who does the thing I want them to do, I teach the call first and use this call. And this makes the job a lot easier. And on the other hand around, I teach the do-si-do and say afterwards then, if you only take the first part of a do-si-do and you see you pass right shoulders and this is a new call, even if you have just 10 minutes square dance practice, you can learn from what you just have learned. And this makes them feel, this is not hard to learn. And they are then in the mood that they say, we want to have more of those.
I think an underlying thing happening here is think about it. Truly, there's not one way to do this. But these are all issues that you need to have in your mind. If you make the decision this way, as long as you understand what you're doing and are doing it consciously and have a reason for what you're doing, that's good. Okay. All right. So building blocks. Do we have any others that you picked up that you might consider building blocks? Pass through. Square through. Building block to do. Okay. So building block for setting up a formation. Anybody else? Veer left. Okay, the next thing on the list is difficulty. Is the call usually easy, average, or difficult to learn? And we may have difference of opinion on this one as well, but certainly it's an issue that you need to consider. And as he said, teaches at most one hard call per session. Don't overload your students with difficulty. And teach your hard calls early enough so they get a proper chance to review and drill. Which would you consider hard aside from spin chain through? If that's all, it needs to be down. Square through, swing through, grand square, runs and trades, possibly, or maybe they're easy from some and harder from other positions. I think you picked out most of the ones that I think about. Okay, units. Does the call have more than one distinctly different application? Does it have a right hand and a left hand? Will it require 2 or more teaching units? Rule being, when a call has 2 or more applications, allow mastery of the first before teaching the second. So you need to identify it and then separate them. Which ones? Bend the line. two-face or facing out or whatever else you might decide to do with it. Circulates left or right. Same thing with Ferris wheel. Right hand and left hand stars. Right, center of the square versus the 8 chain through that we do in the singing call, which is definitely a different application. Technically not on the mainstream list at the moment.
We basically made a short list that you could teach in 10 weeks. And lead right is used a lot and will feel like modern Western square dancing, whereas lead left will feel like that to more advanced dancers, but not necessarily so.
Yeah. Okay. Wheel and deal is the other obvious one. The two-face line version or the facing out version. Units. Sorry, we don't have wheel and deal. Take that back. Sorry. But it is one of those. Dancers. Does it involve 1, 2, 4, 8? Obvious 8s like spin chain through. Obvious 4s like flutter wheel. I think you can all figure that one out for yourself. Do you think there's transfer? What positive or negative transfers might occur between this and another call? Don already listed some of those. Negative, the ones whose names are the same. He went through that list earlier. Transfer, positive transfer. Anything there that you think would help? If you taught one, it would help you teach another? The pairs, dive through and California twirl. I like to do flutter wheel and reverse flutter wheel together. I don't find that to be conflicting. I find that to be helpful. Okay? And then finally, patterns. The whole issue of you need preceding calls, you need following calls, so they don't get themselves into the lead right circle to a line, even though we don't have circle to a line there. But so they don't have that automatic combination in their minds. And you want things that allow you to do singing calls, and you want things that allow you to resolve. And that is a bit of a personal thing. We want to get on to the next part of this, so I'm not going to go into the details on that. So, in light of that, first lesson, we're aiming for circles, squares, that's where we start. Which of those moves would you put in the first lesson? And what we've got are some things here to stick up along the front here, because we didn't get anything to write on in the room, so this is the best option we had. So, which first night? Circles. Circle. Element left. Do-sa-do. Somebody said stars.
Let me point out that this is lesson 1. I don't care what order these are in.
Promenade. 10 classes is our goal, yes. And we've got little sticky things we can rearrange a bit. Wait, let me see what stars. Stars here. Did you get stars? Right and left-hand star there. Right and left grand. Okay, grand, right and left, I think is what I've got here. Yeah. Okay, so what other move would you like? Okay, leave that for the first one for the moment, and then we'll see what else we want to add. Okay, hard ones that we want to spread out. Which ones are those? Spin chain through. And we don't want that too late because that takes some time to learn, but on the other hand, it can't be too early because we've got to teach some other stuff first. Okay, he's thinking maybe...
I actually teach it the third night. Or if I'm doing a combined mainstream plus to a plus destination, I prefer spin chain to gears for the third night. But we can move it 2 inches and correct it later if you'd like.
Yeah, I have to admit that I sat down and looked at this and did the exercise, and I had it up about 7th night.
You guys are going in order. There's no right, there's no wrong.
Yeah.
We're just commenting.
I think square through is an important part called putting early. And I do right and left through much later, but start with
Okay. So we're going to put right and left through up here someplace after square through? You do them in the other order? Okay, what do the rest of you think? So the word was that we should do. Can you do the mic here, please? Can you just repeat that?
Recorded, and even my comments are not going on the mic right now. The cordless mic, Jerry's got it. The comment about doing square through early.
1, 2.
I think it's important personally to get into an 8-chain through formation, which you can easily get to lines with a star through from there. And it means some kind of a right angle turn. Some people use square through. I prefer to use star through and pass through earlier.
I use lead
right and left
lead
through,
right.
Star through, pass through.
Lead right, and you're already there.
Lead right gets you there quickly, but it's a little more difficult to resolve.
And so the comment I made that wasn't on the recording was I would do right and left throughs on the second time, and also a flutter wheel at that time, because I would like to get away from always doing courtesy turns. If we do ladies chain and right and left through, we've got the courtesy turns. Flutter wheel puts the body flow going the other direction.
Okay, so somebody else come up here and stick. So flutter wheel near right and left through there. Wherever. Yeah. All right. So do we want to switch right and left through and square through? Do we agree with that analysis for the moment? Yes. No. Let's try it.
How many say yes?
We're not saying that this is the only way to do this. Okay. This is one way to do it. Okay. So flutter wheel. What about reverse flutter wheel? Would you do that as well?
I would not do it the second night. I would get them to understand the concept between flutter wheel. It would be the third or fourth.
Okay, so can we stick flutter wheel, reverse flutter wheel in here about the third?
Did we put star through on the second night?
You want it on the second night? So do I.
What?
Think about that. Not such a good combination. I would tend to agree.
Which one do you want earlier?
Star through, because Don wants it.
Star through ended up first. California twirl ended up later.
I put reverse flutter wheel later because there's something that flows into it that's we've listed before.
That's right. I said third or fourth or fifth night. Yeah, for that. Veer to give us two-faced lines so that we can start doing trades and circulates.
We're not discussing the list because it's only for us using tonight. Today.
How are we doing?
Your left, Jerry. Where do you want it?
That would be the third night before you get them into that kind of concept. Yeah.
Okay, so how many have we got here? Remember, we've got an awful pile at the front end here. I'm not
hoping for a whiteboard.
Yeah.
Well, the spin chain through is stuck in there.
Okay. So we want, before spin chain through, we want trade.
We need to get out of spin chain through too.
Guys, rather than running the mic around all the time, I'm going to try to repeat everything you guys say. See if that works. Somebody just said they would put that before veer to the left, but I was getting them for. Okay, that looks like you're doing that night 3.
Okay, so we've got circulates. Tell me what's on this one here.
Couple circulate, spin chain.
Couple circulate, spin chain through, veer left, trade. I'll buy that. I was aiming for 4. 5?
Swing through. Before spin chain through? I would hope
You
to,
want
yes.
swing through before spin chain through. But Jerry doesn't want it that early because it's fifth
Okay,
night.
so spin chain through is going to be about seventh night.
So spin chain through is up to seventh already. That's too close to the end. There's not enough practice time. Yeah.
I don't know. I think maybe we can leave it there. After all, they've still got 3 more nights to practice it.
One quick digression or interjection. You guys are thinking. That's what we want.
That's excellent.
You know, we want you to be able to figure out the pros and cons of setting something up like this. Going through that list on your own with your particular list will help you remember which things work and which things don't. I did this session in Germany in October at a caller school, and we had a great time coming up with this. But we had about an hour and a half or 2 to work on it, not just 1 hour.
Okay, so let's see if we can get we got like 9 left here. Can we get the rest of these? Ladies' chain, where should that be?
Ladies' chain we're going to put on the first night. Several people want that.
We've got to get run in near swing through because otherwise it can't get out of waves.
Okay, run. Near swing through to
How
get
about
out of waves.
turn back?
All
No,
right,
but
good point.
as a way to get out of waves, it works.
You turn
turn back.
Near the waves as well.
So maybe put run lighter, but you turn back there.
Okay, I like that idea. You can get out of waves with the U-turn back centers or ends or those facing out, and run, people swing through centers run is a sequence we don't want to teach, even though they're going to use it for a long time. Don't think we want it near spin chain through either.
Dive through. Have we dealt with the California twirl issue? Yep, question. Good point. You turn back with pass through.
That's a good idea. It's usable. It's not confused with any of the others. You turn back second night with pass through. Still
Run with
like to
swing
keep away.
through maybe. No?
Okay, somebody suggested teaching trades and circulates separately. It's only couple circulate, which makes it easier.
Yeah. You have to limit your trades. You certainly have a point that if you did couples trade and couples circulate, you got disaster on your hands. Yes.
But dive through. What week? Any. Near the end. Dive through. Never. Okay. Lead right. Jerry wants it early. What? Lead right. 1 through 10. Give me a number. 3. Okay, some of our early ones are getting kind of crowded and we're going to spread them out. But for now, we'll put it there. Bend the line. What? After run. Now, I personally teach it 2 different nights. Once from lines facing out, once from 2 face lines, and none from lines facing in. Why waste time with that? But make the definition broad enough so you can. You guys want it with run. I personally want it earlier.
Well, what if we're thinking 2, do you want the outface line version in one of these places?
If I have a 2-face line from veer left, from couple circulate, from a wave with centers turned back, it's handy to have to get me back into something comfortable at this point. And it's not going to be confused with anything.
Grand square.
Grand square, Jerry is saying on the 4th night. Grand square is a difficult call, but it's not a building block. It's a good thing to use early to make people think they've really done something. It's a good call to use late because if they don't practice it too much, it's not too critical. It won't break down sequences. Give me a night, but we'll probably aim at it early. Yeah, we're going to have to spread that stuff out. 4. I personally use grand square maybe night 2 or 3 when I'm bringing new people in for the beginning of something and want to give them something they don't need a building block of, but want to give the people that came the first night something new to chew on. But let's call it 4 at this point.
Yeah,
Square
I
through
wouldn't put
and
those
grand
together.
square names similar also.
Yeah, no, those don't belong together.
Okay, I'm going to put it on 3, but we're going to have to spread these because we haven't got too
All
much
right,
here,
we've got 3 moves left, but we can split that stuff at the beginning up because we haven't got 10 lessons here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we've got, sweep a quarter. Way at the end here somewhere. Do-si-do to a wave with swing through maybe.
Can I state again what I found successful on that? I get them into waves maybe the 3rd night after I have lines and A-chain through formations. Step to wave. The basic stuff I do with it is I teach trades and runs. Swing throughs many weeks later. But I teach trades and runs so I can get to waves, two-face lines, and eventually swing through is trade by the right, trade by the left. So I like to have step to a wave fairly early, probably in a 10-week with this, maybe the 4th week. But that's my way that I found successful. But you guys are creating this order, so.
Okay, one more. Ferris wheel. Near the end. With run. Just lonely in here at the moment. Could be, right? You get your waves. Boys run, Ferris wheel.
Not too confused, works
That's
with it.
not a problem.
Not a building block that we need.
Okay, so in order to split this into 10, we need to look at the beginning. And just to kind of summarize for what's on the tape,
Yeah, why don't you
without getting in front of the speaker. Okay, ladies, the first night, we've got circle left, element left, do-si-do, promenade, stars, grand right and left, and ladies chain. Good. Okay, second night, we've got star through, pass through, right and left through, flutter wheel, and U-turn back. Okay, so U-turn back was to go with the pass through. So star through, pass through, and U-turn back, we good with those 3.
Can I point something out at this point? We're pretty comfortable with what we want to teach the first night. And we know we have 9 lessons left. And we have how many calls left? I was trying to count, but I can't get that.
So there's 21.
So we have 21 calls on 9 nights.
3 a night.
3 a night. And
so let's split these up a bit. Flutter wheel, right and left through. Do we want them on the same night? Maybe not. So which one do you want first? Right and left through? Okay, so let's take the flutter wheel. So that makes second night, star through, pass through, U-turn back, and right and left through. All right.
that's a good.
Third night. We got a bunch here. We need to split this up a little bit, I think. We've got trades, veer left, lead right, couple circulate, bend the line, and grand square, and flutter wheel floating. Okay, flutter wheel.
Okay, again, I want to point something out that I found helpful. You've got them working in A-chain through setups, boxes on one side of the square. It's nice to be able to get them to the other side of the square fairly early so they know they're doing 8 dancer stuff and not just 4 dancer stuff. We have 2 calls, aside from spin chain through, that teach that kind of stuff. One is couple circulate, and one is dive through, pass through, etc. And I find getting those fairly early helps me. You know, if I end up being on the right side and want to get back to the left side to do an Alaman left, it helps me get back there. Ferris wheel can be used for that also. But the couple circulate and the dive through, I find as a tool for me choreographically is handy to have fairly early. Again, that's your thoughts on it are up for grabs too.
Okay, so lead right and veer left. Those easily belong on one night.
I think the actions are too similar.
You think the actions are too similar?
Yes. Any yeses or nos on that?
All right. So
agreed to separate them by about 3 people.
So let's leave lead right there for the moment. Yeah. Okay. Veer left. Okay. So take lead right off for the moment. Couple circulate with veer left. That one's okay. Yeah. Trade. Bend the line.
What?
We need bend the line. We need to get out of two-face line. Aside from California twirl.
Okay, well, how about we put We leave the flutter wheel. So now we've got 4. We've got flutter wheel, veer left, couple circulate, and bend the line. That good for that night? Okay.
By the way, my thoughts on trade is it's not partner trade, not people facing the same direction, where you have to teach right shoulder passing to something. That's a separate thing. It's opposite direction trade. Adjacent dancers or ends.
We have to finish. We have to finish up here.
Yeah.
Grand square, lead right. Okay, the next night. Trades, do we want them there? Okay. Square through, and we don't want that with grand square, so we're pushing that one down a bit. Maybe that's enough there. Grand square, lead right, and trade to add to all this other stuff. Okay. Next night, we ready for square through, or do we want to spread that out further? We good with square through there? Yeah. California twirl, do we want that on the same night? No body confusion there?
Just those two is probably good.
Just those two? All right. The next one, reverse flutter wheel. We've got the flutter wheels back 3 nights before that, so that's not bad. Swing through and do-so-do to a wave. Good for that night. Next night, Ferris wheel and run. Run first, probably. Maybe not. Not necessarily. Is that okay? How many nights have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, we've got only 3 moves left, so we're even going to have time for review maybe at the end of this whole thing. Spin chain through definitely has to come in here next. And then that leaves dive through and sweep a quarter and at the end here. And there's time to review.
Okay. If I were doing this myself now, the first thing I see when I'm looking, and I like the way they're taped here, Dottie, you can bunch them. We've got 4 calls the second night. For me, the second night is always the most difficult to teach because I have a whole bunch of calls to review and reteach that for the first night. So introducing a bunch of new calls, and we said we only need 2 to 3 each night. 4 calls is heavy, so we could spread this a little. But it's nice to have some reviewing time and practice time at the end. I don't think we need right now to refine this any further. What we need to do is think about what we've done. One is we've worked as a committee. You can do it as a group or at home. We've separated the hard calls where we could. We've tried like mad, but in 10 lessons in spin chain through, we stuck spin chain through intentionally to give you a hard call to work with. I wouldn't in a 10-week program bother using it myself, but we've tried to separate the hard calls, teach them early as possible to give you practice time. We've separated calls with similar actions. We've separated calls with similar names. And the other thing that I mentioned, but I want to point out, if we were given 20 lessons to teach these same calls, the order may be different. Right now, spin chain through is 3/4 of the way down. We'd be able to have it on the 7th lesson also, but it'd only be 40% of the way down. So what you teach, the order you create, is a function of which calls you're using and how long you have to teach them. And it's also, which I didn't stress, but if you're going from non-dancer to plus, or non-dancer, I've been telling myself not to repeat this, but for many years I taught a group, non-dancer to plus, all position plus, in 13 weeks, teaching 5 or 6 calls a night. And the only way I was able to do it was by really carefully laying each tip out this way. Jerry, you had another comment?
The first thing, I think it's great what the example that we did. You're going to find out that the second night may not fit by the dancers when you get to the second night, and then you will adjust it, and it's nice to have that in so you can move them all out a bit as it goes. You're never going to know until you get there. And it's kind of neat to look at the difference in opinion of everybody here, and you can realize how hard it would be to concoct a teaching order for the existing mainstream of CALLERLAB with everybody's difference of opinions. And the only place that it makes it hard is in the foreign countries, because they live by the teaching order. And when we call in the foreign countries, if they're at a certain point, it's the number 1 through 20 or 22, and it's that's a terrible list. But they live by that list, and any kind of changes I think would be good to that for a better order. But it's going to be a hard, long road to get there. And I would like to thank Dottie and Dawn, because I think they did a real good job on this, getting the callers to think about what goes with what and that. I think it's a great article, and this is a great exercise. I think we should give them a nice hand.
Thank you, Jerry.
And on that note, I want to thank all of you for participating. The exercise did what we was hoping it was going to do, which was to make you think about it, realize that there are lots of options. It's important to think about what's happening there, though. Thank you all for coming. That's the end. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks a lot.